In response to Donald Trump's row with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Oval Office, reports now indicate that the Trump administration is considering ending all ongoing shipments of military support to Ukraine. A U.S. senior administration official has told the Washington Post that the United States can actually pull the plug on military aid that is being sent to Ukraine. The official further said that this decision could apply to the billions of dollars worth radars, vehicles, ammunition and missiles that are awaiting shipment. The Trump officials have also said that the president might decide to even end the indirect support that is being provided by the United States. This would include other types of military financing, intelligence sharing, training for Ukrainian troops and pilots. The latest reports have come against the backdrop of Russia reiterating that its goal in Ukraine remains unchanged after President Zelensky's trip to Washington. Moscow has accused the Ukrainian leadership of being obsessed with prolonging the conflict. Now, earlier in the day, U.S. officials have pushed back on suggestions that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's confrontation with Zelensky was actually premeditated. They noted that efforts were made to strike a more positive tone in planning ahead of the meeting, as indicated by Trump's dropping of his accusation that Zelensky is a dictator since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. The Western nations have allocated more than $250 billion of military, humanitarian and other financial aid to Ukraine. Now, out of this, the United States has been the biggest source of military aid to Ukraine, including weapons, equipment and financial support. And according to the German think tank, the Kiel Institute, from the start of 2022 to the end of 2024, Washington has given about $69 billion in terms of military aid to Kyiv. If we include humanitarian and other financial aid, data shows that the United States has spent about $120 billion. That's about 43% of the total support to Ukraine since the beginning of 2022. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, is happening with respect to the Ukrainian war effort ever since Volodymyr Zelensky made his visit to the White House, we're joined by Mr. Hanno Kling, who is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia. He's joining us live in this broadcast. Mr. Klink, it was unprecedented what played out inside of the Oval Office, where Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, the President, the Vice President of the United States of America, a nation that's been backing the Ukrainian war effort for the last 3 days, effectively telling the Ukrainian President that if he does not do a deal, then the United States is out and may not continue giving the military aid. In your assessment, according to reports that have since come in, do you think the United States is about to pull the plug on supplying more military weapons and financial aid to Ukraine?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I think the jury is still out on what the next steps are of the U.S. government in terms of support to Ukraine. I think what we do know is that the episode that we all witnessed live on television yesterday from the Oval Office was a masterclass in how not to engage a U.S. president in front of the international media and how not to conduct diplomacy. I think it was a colossal misstep by President Zelensky to try to negotiate with the U.S. government in front of the media. And it was also a large negotiating error to try to teach the President of the United States and his assembled senior advisors a class on recent history. I do not
if I can
think
just interject there, you're saying that this is a example, a textbook example of how not to engage with the American president in front of the American media there. You know, the fact is, it's also being said that this berating of the Ukrainian president that we witnessed both by the president and by the vice president perhaps may have been premeditated. Do you think that this is something which the Ukrainian president could have avoided, considering that he'd been fairly clear on what he was expecting from the Americans, and that is security guarantees?
So number one, I do not subscribe to any conspiracy theorists that this was an ambush conducted by President Trump and Vice President Vance. I don't believe that. I certainly wasn't there, but I just don't see that happening. Secondly, the Trump administration made clear that President Zelensky was coming to the White House to sign an economic partnership deal, period, full stop. There were no security guarantees that were going to be associated with that economic partnership deal. However, I think the vision was clear. By tying American and Ukrainian interests together, in this particular case, economic and commercial interests, that was meant to be a part of a foundation for lasting U.S.-Ukrainian relations and a step towards potentially including other aspects of the elements of national power in support of Ukrainian sovereignty. This was one step, one of several that was hopefully going to lead to ceasefire negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. So this was, I think, the initial step. There was never any American agreement that there was going to be security guarantees associated with this economic partnership.
All right. And very quickly, because we're short of time, now Volodymyr Zelensky will be meeting with the European leaders in London. One expects that the mood and the tone and tempo of those conversations will be different. Are we to at this moment read that even though the United States of America is such close allies with its other NATO partners such as the United Kingdom, France, Germany, etc., there is a clear wedge that this Ukraine war is now forced between some of the closest allies of the Americans within the NATO nations, where the security interests of the NATO allies on the European continent are different from the way the United States sees its own security objectives?
I wouldn't go that far. There's definitely some political tension between the United States and some, not all, but some of its NATO partners in how to approach a peace accord, both short-term and long-term, regarding the war between Ukraine and Russia. But fundamentally, I think this underscores that U.S. participation, U.S. leadership is required for any type of lasting peace. The Europeans have talked a lot about stepping up, and they have in the last couple of years increased their aid to Ukraine. But again, the one single nation that has provided more aid than any other nation has been the United States. And it has been the decisive factor in ensuring that Russia would not succeed on the battlefield. Europe needs to step up even more.
All right. Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kling, Heino Kling, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.